Dedan Kimathi, the Mau Mau strategist statue of Field Marshal Dedan Kimathi in Nairobi, Kenya, unveiled in 2007 as part of his belated recognition as a national hero. Introduction. Dawn in the Aberdares. It is before dawn on October 21, 1956, in the dense forests of Tetu in Nyeri. A lone figure limps through the underbrush, Field Marshal Dedan Kimathi Wachiuri, the most wanted man in colonial Kenya. Exhausted and starving, Kimathi clutches a homemade panga, machete, and a revolver with only a few bullets. Suddenly, a gunshot rings out. Kimathi falls, a bullet shattering his leg. The crack of dawn finds him bound to a makeshift stretcher, clad in his iconic leopard skin hide, being carried out of the forest by colonial security forces. The arrest of Dedan Kimathi, the fiery Mau Mau leader who organized Kenya's Land and Freedom Army in the forests of Mount Kenya and the Aberdares, marks a turning point in the rebellion. Little did the British know the legend of Kimathi would only grow after his capture. And little did Kimathi know his dream of freedom would outlive him by only a few years. The dramatic saga of Dedan Kimathi's rise, rebellion, and fall is a story of courage and irony, one that history enthusiasts still find as enthralling as any epic. Chapter 1. Early Life and Road to Rebellion. Dedan Kimathi was born Kimathi wa Wachiuri around October 1920 in Tetu, Nyeri County, in the Central Highlands of Kenya. Raised during the harsh era of British colonial rule, Kimathi's early life foreshadowed the defiant path he would take. He was a bright student, noted for his writing and oratory skills, but also unruly in temperament. According to historian David Anderson, young Kimathi was fiercely competitive, bullying, and frequently disciplined by teachers. He briefly joined the British Army in 1940, only to be discharged after 1 month for drunkenness and violence, an ironic twist for a man who would later wage war against the very empire he had enlisted to serve. Over the 1940s, Kimathi drifted through odd jobs, from swineherd to primary school teacher, but his confrontational streak persisted. He was reportedly fired from the teaching post for beating his pupils. By the late 1940s, disillusioned by colonial injustices, Kimathi gravitated toward activism. While working in Olkalu around 1947-48, he encountered members of the Kenya African Union, KAU, the leading nationalist party. The young firebrand quickly rose to become secretary of the Olkalu KAU branch by 1950. This branch was dominated by militants secretly supportive of a burgeoning underground movement known as the Mau Mau. The Mau Mau, formerly called the Kenya Land and Freedom Army, KLFA, was a coalition of Kikuyu, Embu, and Meru people determined to reclaim lands seized by white settlers and end colonial tyranny. The movement spread through secret oaths binding members to the cause of land and freedom. In 1951, Kimathi swore the Mau Mau oath and joined the militant 40 Group, a cell of ex-Untold African veterans spearheading armed resistance. His zeal and charisma made him a natural leader. As branch secretary, Kimathi personally presided over oath-taking ceremonies, considering them vital to cement solidarity. He did not hesitate to enforce loyalty, by force if necessary. Kimathi carried a double-barreled shotgun while administering oaths, and was known to mete out beatings to those reluctant to commit, believing unity justified coercion. Such uncompromising tactics soon drew the attention of colonial authorities. In 1951, he was arrested for Mau Mau activities, but he daringly escaped custody with the aid of sympathizers in the local police. This escape into hiding marked the beginning of his life as a guerrilla, as Kimathi retreated into the forest to wage war against the British. Chapter 2. Rise of a Field Marshal in the Forest. By 1952, the Mau Mau uprising had erupted into open conflict, and Kimathi emerged as one of its most capable guerrilla strategists. In the forests of Mount Kenya and the Aberdare Range, he helped organize scattered fighters into a more structured force. Kimathi was instrumental in forming the Kenya Defense Council in 1953, effectively a war council to coordinate all forest fighters under a unified command. He also led efforts to establish formal military ranks and units within the rebel army. His leadership talents and fearlessness earned him rapid promotions. He took on the title of Field Marshal, one of only a few Mau Mau leaders, including Baimungi Marete, Musa Mwariama, Stanley Mathenge, and the formidable female leader Muthoni Kirima, to hold that highest rank. From their forest strongholds, Kimathi and his fighters launched daring raids and acts of sabotage against colonial targets. They attacked settler farms, destroyed colonial supply lines, and eliminated loyalist informants in Kikuyu villages. Kimathi's very name struck fear into colonial authorities, who saw him as the linchpin of the rebellion. The British Special Branch, Colonial Intelligence, described Kimathi as the undisputed leader of the Mau Mau guerrillas. He was said to possess a charismatic, almost messianic influence over his troops. Many fighters wore their hair in long dreadlocks in emulation of their leaders. Dreadlocks became a symbol of defiance and Mau Mau unity, later even inspiring similar styles in faraway movements like the Rastafari. Kimathi combined traditional beliefs with revolutionary fervor. He was deeply spiritual and reportedly consulted Kikuyu seers and rituals for guidance. As a field marshal, he donned a distinctive leopard skin cloak as part of his uniform, projecting both a link to African heritage and a fearsome image. In 1953, Kimathi convened a major gathering of rebel leaders, a war council, deep in the Aberdares. There, he and other Mau Mau generals mapped out strategy and formally affirmed the structure of the Kenya Land and Freedom Army. From that point, Kimathi acted in effect as the commander-in-chief of Mau Mau forces, issuing orders and writing circulars to different forest units. He was a prolific writer, keeping notebooks and issuing letters to spread the Mau Mau message. Indeed, Kimathi strongly believed the movement's story should be recorded for posterity, and he maintained diaries of wartime events, though most of his writings remained hidden or lost for decades. Despite sparse resources, Kimathi's forces proved remarkably resilient. They navigated rugged terrain and survived on meager supplies and extraordinary discipline. Oathing rituals helped enforce loyalty, and deserters or traitors were harshly punished. Kimathi himself was known for strict discipline, at times brutally so, to maintain unity. Under his leadership, Mau Mau fighters scored some successes in 1952-53, emboldening many young Kenyans to join. By late 1953, the guerrillas controlled large swathes of forest. The colonial government in Nairobi was in a panic, its authority shaken by the ferocity of the revolt. Chapter 3. Guerrilla War and Internal Struggles. Facing the British Empire's massive resources, Kimathi's rebellion was always an uphill battle. By 1954, the British had deployed tens of thousands of troops, police, and loyalist auxiliaries against the Mau Mau. They launched Operation Anvil in April 1954, sweeping Nairobi and detaining tens of thousands of suspected Mau Mau supporters. Worse for Kimathi, the British developed counterinsurgency tactics that turned the tide. One infamous tactic was the use of pseudo-gangs. Units of former Mau Mau fighters flipped to the British side, who would disguise themselves as rebels to infiltrate the forest. These turncoat gangs sowed confusion and suspicion among the fighters. Kimathi's men, exhausted and paranoid, often couldn't tell friend from foe. The psychological impact was devastating, as intended. It wreaked havoc in the forest, causing chaos and distrust. Meanwhile, divisions within the Mau Mau leadership began to surface, threatening their unity from within. A major rift developed between Kimathi and his fellow leader General Stanley Mathenge. Originally, Mathenge had been a senior commander. Some fighters considered him the overall leader of the Nyeri region battalions in the early days, with Kimathi merely acting as his secretary or subordinate. Kimathi's meteoric rise to field marshal and his assertive style bred resentment. The proud Mathenge never accepted any lesser title and continued to operate somewhat independently in the western Aberdares. Tensions between the two men festered. They had never seen eye to eye, one account noted. Mathenge often reminded Kimathi that he had been democratically chosen leader of Nyeri fighters, implying Kimathi had overstepped by assuming command. These leadership quarrels came to a head in 1955. As British pressure mounted, Mathenge's faction sought to negotiate a truce. Mathenge was reportedly willing to consider the amnesty that the colonial governor Sir Evelyn Baring had offered. In January 1955, the British had even airdropped pamphlets over the forests proclaiming a general amnesty for any Mau Mau who surrendered, promising they would not be prosecuted and would receive food and medical care. It was a tempting offer to some exhausted fighters, though Kimathi himself warned it was a terrible gamble. Many who surrendered were shot or tortured despite the promises. Mathenge's overtures to contact the British were seen by Kimathi as betrayal. According to later historical investigations, Kimathi was furious at Mathenge for attempting separate peace contacts. By early 1956, the feud reached a dramatic climax. Field Marshal Kimathi had Mathenge arrested in the forest and hauled before a kangaroo court-martial in Kimathi's camp. The charge, treason, for seeking a ceasefire with the enemy. The penalty would likely have been death. In a twist straight out of an adventure novel, a Mau Mau fighter named Deborah Wambui Nderitu, one of Kimathi's trusted camp members, claimed she secretly freed Mathenge from captivity before Kimathi could take unspecified action on him. Deborah recounts that she untied Mathenge one night and helped him slip away down a valley, while Kimathi and his loyalists were distracted. Mathenge vanished into the wilderness, never to be seen again. Not even a body was ever found. Kimathi never spoke of Mathenge again, and within the Mau Mau ranks, it became a closed topic. This cloak and dagger episode has fueled endless speculation. Some later alleged that Kimathi might have had Mathenge killed, and then spread a story that he fled to Ethiopia, a conspiracy theory that persists to this day. Others believe Mathenge truly escaped and perhaps lived out his days quietly abroad. Famously, in 2003, the Kenyan government mistook an Ethiopian old man for the long-lost Mathenge and gave him a hero's welcome, only to discover via DNA that it was not him. The unresolved fate of General Mathenge remains one of the Mau Mau War's lingering mysteries, a human drama set against the backdrop of a brutal anti-colonial struggle. Kimathi also had to contend with other setbacks. Earlier in 1954, Mau Mau Field Marshal General China, Waruhu Itote, had been captured by the British. General China later attempted to persuade his comrades to surrender, even broadcasting appeals on radio under duress. But Kimathi and many fighters refused to give in. By 1956, however, Kimathi's own situation had deteriorated. The Mau Mau insurgency was largely broken. Thousands of fighters were killed or captured, and over 1 million Kikuyu civilians had been herded into fortified villages and detention camps, what historian Caroline Elkins termed Britain's Gulag. British forces, guided by ruthless commanders like Colonel Ian Henderson of the Special Branch, had methodically eliminated rebel units. Kimathi's circle in the forest grew ever smaller. He lost many of his top lieutenants. Even his closest companion in the forest, a young woman referred to as Wanjiru, who was Kimathi's forest wife, was killed in action in mid-1956. This left Kimathi isolated, with only a few loyal fighters remaining by the autumn of 1956. Chapter 4. The Capture, Fall of the Forest General. In the chilly pre-dawn hours of October 21, 1956, Dedan Kimathi's 4-year reign as the Mau Mau's military genius came to an abrupt end. With his band of rebels decimated, Kimathi was desperate for food and relief. According to later trial records and witness accounts, he ventured out of hiding at dawn, possibly intending to turn himself in for a chance at survival. Some historians speculate that Kimathi might have been attempting to surrender at a local home guard post. He was heading for a police camp to try and surrender, hoping the home guards would spare his life, as newly unearthed trial papers suggest. Whether his goal was surrender or simply a food foray, Kimathi's luck finally ran out. In the village of Kehigaini, at the forest's edge, a Kikuyu home guard named Ndirangu Mau caught sight of a man crossing a trench carrying bananas and maize. Realizing it was the fugitive field marshal, Ndirangu fired and shot Kimathi through the leg, shattering his thigh. As Kimathi fell, he allegedly raised his arms and identified himself. "I am Dedan Kimathi," perhaps to ensure he was captured alive rather than summarily executed. The home guards pounced on him. This dramatic moment, in a sense, was not a triumph of British soldiers but of African collaborators. The legendary insurgent brought down by men of his own community fighting for the colonial regime. Indeed, Kimathi was betrayed at the last by those he had fought for, a bitter reality not lost on Kenyans then and now. The colonial government had placed hefty bounties on Mau Mau leaders, reportedly $500 or more, and Ndirangu and his compatriots gladly claimed the reward for Kimathi's capture. The empire's most hunted man was now in chains. British Superintendent Ian Henderson, the spy master who had obsessively tracked Kimathi for years, was actually not present at the capture. He happened to be entertaining Princess Margaret in Nairobi that day. But Henderson soon arrived to take charge of the prized captive. Kimathi, bleeding and in pain, was whisked away to Nyeri General Hospital under heavy guard. The British wasted no time in exploiting the propaganda value of his downfall. Photographers snapped pictures of Kimathi on a stretcher, his dreadlocks disheveled, dressed in a tattered leopard skin garment, potent images to demoralize the remaining rebels. The colonial authorities even printed over 120,000 leaflets with Kimathi's capture photo and scattered them across Kenya to trumpet their victory and crush the Mau Mau's spirit. This psychological warfare had a strong effect. Seeing their indomitable leader wounded and helpless caused many Mau Mau fighters and supporters to lose hope. Kimathi's own words, however, show he remained defiant to the end. He was charged not with treason or murder, but with the simple crime of possessing a firearm without a license, a colonial legal maneuver that made it easy to secure a death sentence. While recovering from his wound, Kimathi was put on trial at Nyeri in November 1956. Too injured to stand, he lay on a stretcher or sat in a wheelchair throughout the proceedings. The trial was swift and procedural. Many call it a kangaroo court. The only evidence needed was the .38 caliber revolver found on him. That alone, under emergency regulations, carried a mandatory death penalty. The European judge, Chief Justice O'Connor, along with 3 African jury assessors, pronounced Kimathi guilty and sentenced him to hang. No appeals could save him. The colonial government was intent on making an example of the man who had become a folk hero to many Kenyans. Awaiting execution in Kamiti Maximum Security Prison in Nairobi, Kimathi spent his last days contemplating his family and the future of Kenya. He penned a poignant letter to a Catholic priest, Father Marino, asking that his young son be given a good education, and that his wife Mukami, herself detained as a Mau Mau sympathizer, be comforted and cared for. In another letter, written the day before his execution, Kimathi reflected on his fate. Meeting Mukami one final time on the morning of February 18, 1957, he spoke words of courage that have since been etched into Kenya's history. "I have no doubt in my mind that the British are determined to execute me," he told her. "I have committed no crime. My only crime is that I am a Kenyan revolutionary who led a liberation army. Now, if I must leave you and my family, I have nothing to regret. My blood will water the tree of independence." True to his resolve, Dedan Kimathi Wachiuri was hanged at dawn on February 18, 1957, at Kamiti Prison. He was 36 years old. The British buried him in secret, in an unmarked grave within the prison compound, to prevent his final resting place from becoming a rallying shrine. For decades, the exact location of his remains remained unknown, a lingering, cruel footnote to colonial injustice. Kimathi's execution effectively marked the end of the forest war phase of the Mau Mau uprising. With their field marshal gone, the remaining Mau Mau resistance crumbled within months. Yet, as Kimathi prophetically believed, his blood indeed nurtured the cause of freedom. The rebellion he led had shaken the foundations of British rule, and although armed resistance was extinguished, the struggle for Kenyan independence continued in other forms. Kenya would gain independence just 6 years later, in 1963, a vindication of sorts for the sacrifice of Kimathi and thousands of Mau Mau fighters. Chapter 5. Legacy, Irony, and Cultural Reflections. The story of Dedan Kimathi did not end with his death. In many ways, the meaning of Kimathi became a contested legacy in post-colonial Kenya, marked by dramatic ironies and shifting narratives over time. To the British who hanged him, Kimathi was a dangerous terrorist. To many ordinary Kenyans, he was a martyred freedom fighter. Yet in the first decades of independent Kenya, officialdom shunned Kimathi and the Mau Mau. The new nation's founding president, Jomo Kenyatta, himself once falsely accused by the British of leading Mau Mau, chose to downplay the Mau Mau's role and promoted a narrative of unity that left former Mau Mau fighters marginalized. Kenyatta's government, and his successor Daniel Arap Moi, even maintained the colonial-era ban on the Mau Mau movement, branding its veterans as troublemakers rather than heroes. It was a deep irony. The very rebels who hastened independence were denied recognition by the independent state. Kimathi's name was nearly erased from official history. For years, his widow Mukami lived in poverty and obscurity, ignored by the authorities. One telling incident occurred in 1990 when South African anti-apartheid icon Nelson Mandela visited Kenya shortly after his release from prison. Mandela, aware of Mau Mau's importance, asked to visit Dedan Kimathi's grave and to meet Mukami Kimathi. The Kenyan government at the time awkwardly refused, officially because Kimathi's grave location was unknown, and unofficially because Mau Mau was still a taboo subject. Mandela left Kenya without being granted his wish. He would only meet Mukami 15 years later in 2005 after Kimathi's status had been posthumously rehabilitated. The refusal highlighted how Kenyatta and Moi's regimes sought to bury the memory of Kimathi, much as the British had buried his body. Over time, however, calls for recognizing Mau Mau veterans grew louder, especially as Kenya reflected on the true cost of independence. In 2003, as Kenya's third president Mwai Kibaki took office, the government finally lifted the ban on Mau Mau and officially recognized it as a legitimate freedom movement. This opened the door to honoring figures like Kimathi. In 2006, Kibaki's administration declared October 20th a public holiday, Mashujaa Day or Heroes Day, partly in honor of liberation heroes including Kimathi. And on the 50th anniversary of Kimathi's execution, February 18, 2007, a 2.1-meter bronze statue of Dedan Kimathi was unveiled in central Nairobi. The statue depicts Kimathi in full guerrilla regalia, clad in military fatigues and his trademark leopard skin, with a rifle in one hand and a dagger in the other, poised as if still fighting. The unveiling was a moment of redemption. Kenya was acknowledging that Dedan Kimathi Wachuri, once vilified, was indeed a national hero. Beyond the statue, Kimathi's name now graces numerous institutions and places. Streets, schools, and even a university bear his name. For instance, Dedan Kimathi University of Technology in Nyeri and the Dedan Kimathi Stadium are named in his honor, as is Kimathi Street in Nairobi's city center. His face has appeared on murals and his story in countless books, plays, and songs. Notably, writers Ngugi wa Thiong'o and Micheri Mugo even immortalized him in a play, The Trial of Dedan Kimathi, highlighting his defiance in the face of colonial justice. Yet some ironies persist. Kimathi fought to reclaim land and dignity for his people. He wanted the people to be fed and given land, as one writer notes. But today many of the land issues and injustices he rebelled against remain unresolved. Kenya honors him with monuments and memorials, but no land, as the people he fought for still struggle with poverty and inequality. In 2013, in a landmark moment of historical reckoning, the British government issued an official apology and paid compensation to over 5,000 elderly Mau Mau survivors who had been tortured or abused during the 1950s war. This acknowledgement, coming half a century late, underscored the brutality of the colonial response that Kimathi and others endured. It also ironically meant that the same British Crown which once condemned Kimathi now tacitly admitted that the Mau Mau had legitimate grievances. Perhaps the most poignant unresolved chapter of Kimathi's legacy is the whereabouts of his remains. For decades, Mukami Kimathi and other Mau Mau veterans pressed the Kenyan and British authorities to locate and exhume Kimathi's body from Kamiti prison for a proper burial. British records indicated he was buried within Kamiti, but the exact spot was kept secret and apparently lost. In 2019, the Dedan Kimathi Foundation announced they had identified a likely gravesite at Kamiti, but still no exhumation followed. Mukami, who lived to the age of 101, died in May 2023 without ever fulfilling her wish to give her husband a dignified burial. At her state funeral, President William Ruto vowed to work with veterans to finally recover Kimathi's remains and lay him to rest with honor. As of the latest reports, however, that promise remains unfulfilled, a reminder that the wounds of that era have not entirely healed. Looking back, Dedan Kimathi's life is a study in courage, sacrifice, and complex legacy. He was the mastermind of a guerrilla war that hastened the end of colonial rule in Kenya, a man of principle who chose the hard road of resistance. He was also a product of his time, capable of both inspiring leadership and severe methods that invite debate. The British demonized him as a bloodthirsty terrorist, while many Kenyans lionized him as a freedom fighter. In truth, Kimathi was a bit of both and more, a flawed human being who rose to an extraordinary historical challenge. Today, Kimathi is firmly enshrined among Kenya's national heroes. Each year on Heroes Day, alongside names like Jomo Kenyatta and Tom Mboya, Dedan Kimathi's name is invoked as a symbol of resistance. His story is taught to school children as part of the history of Kenya's long journey to independence. And when Kenyans pass by the bronze statue of Kimathi in downtown Nairobi, the spot where colonial authorities once declared him an outlaw, they are reminded of the dramatic irony that history dealt him. The very independent Kenya that once disowned him now celebrates his legacy of freedom. As Kimathi foretold in his prison cell, his blood indeed watered the tree of independence. The fruits of that tree, liberty and self-determination, are enjoyed by Kenyans today, even if the full ideals he fought for are still a work in progress. In the end, Dedan Kimathi's 36 years of life made an outsized impact. His rebellious spirit lives on in Kenya's collective memory, a testament to the idea that those who fight for justice, though they may not see victory in their lifetime, pave the way for future generations to triumph. Sources: Dedan Kimathi's biography and Mau Mau Historian.wikipedia.org.wikipedia. Org. Kimathi's early life and militant activities in .wikipedia.org. Wikipedia.org. Mau Mau War Council and Military Structuring. Wikipedia.org. British Counterinsurgency Tactics Nation. African Nation.Africa. Kimathi Mathing Conflict and Escape of Mathing Standard Media.co. Kestandardmedia.co.ke. Kimathi's capture and trial details and .wikipedia.org. Wikipedia. Last letters in execution quoteen. Wikipedia.org.wikipedia. Posthumous legacy and recognition in .wikipedia.org. Red Pepper. Org.uk. Mukami Kimathi's efforts and current status of Kimathi's Gravlemond and Farlemond, Defar.